Here with Marty Brennaman, the longtime award-winning broadcaster for the Cincinnati Reds out of Portsmouth, Virginia. Woodrow Wilson High School, our guest here on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1. Marty also in the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, the National Radio Hall of Fame, called Virginia Squires Tidewater Tides games. You know about his great career, and a 2000 Ford C. Frick Award winner, the honor presented annually by the National Baseball Hall of Fame to a broadcaster for major contributions to the game of baseball. Marty, what's it mean when you get that award, and also when people say the best broadcasters of all time, Vin Scully, Jack Buck, Ernie Harwell, and they mentioned Marty Brennaman's name in that company? What's that mean to you?
Well, it means a lot. I knew all those fellas, and Vin I've talked to quite a bit since my announced retirement. He's been, at times, he's been almost like a mentor to me. Anytime I needed help in making a decision or advice, I could always go to him. And so I've had a really kind of a neat relationship with him over the years. And Jack Buck I knew for years as voice of the Cardinals, and Ernie Harwell, who might be the single nicest person that's ever been involved in this business. So yeah, it's an honor. And as I told someone not so long ago, I've never ever felt that my work compared with those guys. I've never felt that I was on the same level with those guys as far as broadcasting big league baseball. Obviously, other people do. But I've never felt that I was in that class. Do I think I can broadcast a baseball game? Well, yeah, I think I'm a good baseball broadcaster, but I've never felt I was at that level. So to have other people talk about that is something that at times I'm totally mystified over. Sometimes I ask myself, you're not that damn good, but other people think I am. And so that's fine. But the biggest thing is that I knew those fellas from a business perspective, and in Vinny's case, I think a little bit more than that. And when I went into the hall in 2000, I found out, and I shouldn't have known but I found out that the year before I'd missed going in by one vote.
Oh, really?
And I really had been better off had I not known that, because then we fast forward a year later, and Rob Butcher, who is still today the director of media relations for the Reds, called me on the phone the day before the announcement was going to be made, and he said, let me ask you a question. I said, what? He said, are you going to be home around 11 a.m. tomorrow morning? And I said, yeah, why? He said, well, because I've been informed by the Hall of Fame that whoever gets the Frick Award for this year will receive a phone call. I really believe to this day that Rob knew beforehand, but he appealed to my logic by saying, they don't want to call a guy and they can't get a hold of him to let him know. So they're calling a number of different people. And I just wanted to check with you. I said, yeah, I'll be home around 11 o'clock. So the next day comes and the phone rang at 11 o'clock comes and no call. And so I'm thinking, well, it's not going to happen. At about 11:03, the phone rang and I answered it and I said hello. And the voice on the other end said, Marty Brennaman. I said, yes. He said, this is Dale Petrosky, president of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Well, that's all I heard. I mean, he didn't call me to ask me how I was doing. And so I think my whole career flashed in front of me. And he called to tell me, and I know that Vinny and Jack Buck and Ernie Harwell were all very instrumental in my going in 2000. At the time that I went in, I was the second youngest ever to go in to the broadcaster's wing. The youngest was Vin Scully, and I was second. I think that's changed. I think some guys are younger than, I think I was 56 or something like that at the time I went in. But it was really cool because I got a call from Jack Buck, and he said, your life will never be the same from now on. And I said, what do you mean? He said, because every time your name is written or uttered in a news sense, he said, it will be the same for your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. He said, in front of your name will be Baseball Hall of Famer from now on for the rest of mankind. And he said, so enjoy it. And I got a call from Johnny Bench, and this is before cell phones or social media. And Bench said, do yourself a favor and get a legal pad and write down the name of everyone that you hear from. He said, because they are the people that really are happy for you and that they really care about you. He said, people that, for whatever the reason, don't like you or don't respect your work, you're not going to hear from them. He said, but those people that contact you are the ones that are really thrilled that you're having this great honor bestowed upon you. And he was right. He was right. So it was a kick. My dad had passed on in 1992, and my mother was still alive, and she was there at the ceremony in Cooperstown. So it was really special, and people constantly ask me, did you expect something like this to happen when you came to the Reds in 1974? And I said no, because there was no such thing as a Ford Frick Award in 1974. I think Ben and a couple of Mel Allen and Red Barber, I think, were the two that went in when the award was established sometime in the late 70s. But when I came, there was no such thing as that.
Pretty awesome stuff. A couple more minutes with Marty Brennaman, the longtime voice of the Cincinnati Reds, Hall of Famer out of Portsmouth, Virginia, here on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1. Marty, this 2019 Cincinnati Reds ball club, from the outside looking in, most would have thought the hitting would be there, the pitching a bit of a question mark. It seems to be somewhat the opposite, with the pitching better than expected, hitting a little up and down. What have you seen from this club here in 2019?
Well, you got to peg pretty good. Coming out of spring training in Arizona, I would have said that this club is going to be a terror offensively, and the pitching was a question mark. They picked up a couple of guys in the offseason, Tanner Roark from the Nationals, who has really pitched well for this club, and Alex Wood, a left-hander who's not thrown one pitch yet because he's had back problems. He's close, I think, to coming back now, but then the rest of the rotation was going to be relatively young, and their pitching was awful last year. I mean, awful's not a strong enough word to describe how bad the pitching was last year. But to get a couple of veteran pitchers, I thought the pitching would be better, but I still question how good it would be. While the season began, the pitching was sensational. And quite honestly, the pitching has been good right up to today. The offense was almost non-existent, and I was stunned. With all the firepower this team had going into the season, with the likes of Joey Votto and Scooter Gennett and the addition of Yasiel Puig and Eugenio Suarez, the third baseman, I felt that this club was going to be about as good top to bottom offensively as any team in this league. And they didn't hit. They have finally started to hit. And I mean hit big time. Now they're doing what we all felt they'd do back in late March when they opened the season. So they've got to sustain that, and they played under 500 baseball. But at the same time, in a very competitive division, for my money, I think it's the toughest division in baseball. I'm sure there are people that would argue with that, saying it's the American League East, but I'm not so sure. They are still within striking distance of the Cubs, who have led the division for quite a while now, and Milwaukee's right on their heels. The Cardinals have not been very good, and Pittsburgh has been up and down. So they've not been blown out of the water. And I said back at the end of April, if they get to the point where they're 9.5 or 10 games or 11 games out of first place, they've got a real problem. And they're not there. They're not even close to that right now. So they just got to start becoming a bit more consistent. They got to find an ability, which they haven't done yet, to run off 6 or 7 or 8 wins in a row. They've not been able to do that. If they do, they're going to be right back in the hunt. Their defense has been incredibly good. I thought that was going to be the single biggest sticking point when the year started, but they have been excellent defensively. And their bullpen has been good. I sometimes worry about the bullpen getting burned out because David Bell, the rookie manager, has gone to it repeatedly, and he feels confident that they can maintain the level of productivity throughout the rest of the year that they've been able to maintain through the first 2+ months. Time will tell if that happens or not. If it does, then this club's still got a chance to be a factor in the division and be a factor in the league. But the pitching has got to continue to be good, and the offense has got to stay where it is right now.
Last one for you, Marty, and I could chat with you all day long. Love hearing the stories and your perspective and insight. Spending these final games with your son, Tom, who has done some major broadcasting, become one of the best in the business in his own right, also announced games for the Arizona Diamondbacks for several years. How special and unique is that for you?
Well, it's wonderful for me. I never thought he'd ever come home. I go back to his college days. He went to Ohio University and came home one summer and would leave. He'd come home for a few days, and then he would leave and go to the Outer Banks. My mom and dad owned a place down in Kill Devil Hills, and Tom would go and stay there all summer with them and work on the beach. And he came home one summer early after school let out and said, I think I want to do what you do for a living. And we'd never talked about it before. I thought, that's great. I hope it works out. Well, it worked out far better than anything I ever dreamed about. He did 1 year of Reds games on television with Johnny Bench, and then in 1990, he went to Chicago and worked for 10 years with Harry Carey doing Cubs baseball. And from there, he went to the Diamondbacks, and he married a girl from Phoenix, and I figured he'd never come home again. And God bless the owner of our club, Bob Castellini, who asked me one day, what do you think about bringing Tom back to work with you on Reds broadcast? And I said, it'd be wonderful. I said, I don't think you can do it. But he said, well, we'll see. And he did. He jumped through hoops to make it happen. and brought Tom back, and I had no knowledge or clue that this was the one job that Tom wanted. Tom wanted to come back home. He had always kept up with what his local high school was doing in football and basketball and baseball, and I never knew that. And so he got the chance to come home, and he and I worked together a lot early. But at some point, they came to Tom and said, "We want you to be the lead announcer on television." And so he and I don't do any games at all anymore, but that's irrelevant. The most important thing is he's here, and he's got two youngsters, a daughter, Ella, who's a sophomore in high school, and a son, Luke, who will be a freshman in high school next fall. And to have them home is really cool. And Tom loves this city unlike anybody I know. I thought I loved it more than anybody could possibly love it. But Tom has an affection for this city that is, if anything, more deep-seated than mine is. So it's nice to have him back, and I've been really proud of what he's accomplished. He did baseball, and he's done college football for Fox, and he is a mainstay on their announcing teams that do NFL football every fall. I think he's done football for Fox now for like 21 or 22 years, and it's really nice to have him around and have dinner with him every night in the press dining room when we were playing baseball during the season. So I know Pete Rose used to say he's got good bloodlines. Pete could always relate something like that to the horse racing business. And I think, whatever Tom's accomplished, he's done it because of his own innate talent. He didn't do it, I don't think, from inheriting anything from me other than understanding the way the business is. He grew up in the business. He's never been awed by being around great players because he grew up calling Julius Erving by his first name or calling him by his nickname Doc and Charlie Scott and Gervin and all the rest of those guys. So he grew up being around great talents. And when he came here, being around Bench and Rose and Morgan and Foster and Concepcion and Griffey and Geronimo and people like that, it did not bother him at all. And so he's had a great career, and I've been thrilled for him.
Well, Marty, it's been a real treat for all of us baseball fans, all of us sports fans, to hear your voice over the years. Enjoy the rest of the ride here. Hope it's a summer and fall to remember, whether you're in Cincinnati, Virginia, or all over the country. You've heard the great voice of Marty Brennaman. Thank you so much, and we'll talk down the road, all right?
All right, Matthew. Thank you very much, pal. Enjoyed it.
You got it. That is the Hall of Famer Marty Brennaman right here out of Portsmouth, Virginia, and Woodrow Wilson High School with us on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1.